It's another normal day in the small town of Midwich. Young couple Sam and Zoe are moving here to start a new life, and they celebrate by getting frisky on the floor of their new home. Psychiatrist Susanna ends another therapy session before informing her daughter Cassie that she's leaving for London on a date. Jody comes from the city to see her pregnant sister Deborah. Stuart invites co-worker Amrita to stay at his house so they can have some fun while his family is away for the weekend. Suddenly, the power begins failing all over town, starting with small flickers that eventually make all devices go off. All the animals are also starting to get disturbed and uncomfortable in their homes. At the police station, Officer Paul receives a report about the town's power lines, but they can't find the source of the problems. Moments later, the power goes out completely. The horses at the local stable are so uncomfortable that they finally push the doors open and run through town as if they were scared of something. In the school, a boy wakes up and creeps out his teacher Jane by standing frozen in the middle of the hallway with a blank stare on his face. At that moment, a bright light falls from the sky and hits the school garden, and everyone in town begins passing out right where they are standing. In London, Susanna finishes her date and tries to take the train, but the service isn't working because of the power loss and she has to take a cab. Meanwhile, Stuart's daughter Charlotte wakes up in her granny's house when she hears her mother Sarah watching the news. Apparently Midwich has been sealed off because of the power loss, yet there haven't been any posts on social media from the citizens. When Susanna makes it to town, she finds the road blocked by the police, and they won't let her pass even when she mentions she lives there. Susanna decides to walk through the woods to enter the town through an abandoned road, and she comes across a group of people wearing hazmat suits. They're doing some testing by tying a man to a rope and letting him walk further into town, but as soon as he comes close to a sleeping citizen, the man passes out as well. Some of these people see Susanna and try to stop her, so Susanna begins running away, only to pass out as well. At the police station, Paul meets Bryony, a special agent sent from Home Office to analyze the situation in Midwich, but they can't make sense of it, especially when the drones they sent come back with nothing but static. At that moment they're informed of a body that woke up, so Paul and Bryony go to Midwich, where in a tent outside the border they meet Susanna. It seems people who weren't there when it all happened wake up quickly. Susanna explains she felt lightness and dizziness before it all went quiet. While Susanna is taken to a shelter, Paul and Bryony approach the town limit and Paul plays a message Deborah had left on his voicemail before it all went down. While Deborah explained she was afraid of the power issues, the static cut her message off. The next morning, a helicopter is sent to investigate. The chopper takes off normally, but as soon as it flies closer downtown, the pilots lose consciousness and the helicopter crashes on the ground. Phased evacuation is finally approved, and as the people that lived outside the area with the weird unconsciousness are guided out of town, Susanna bumps into Sarah, who just arrived. Neither of them wants to leave without their families, and Susanna begins making a scene, causing soldiers and Paul to come to stop her. Suddenly, everyone's phone begins receiving messages and calls. It seems people are starting to wake up, and Sarah calls Stuart, who panics when he realizes his wife is back while Amrita's still around. The police begin making preparations for a full investigation, and Bryony realizes Paul hasn't gotten a message from his wife yet, so she volunteers to check on her. When Bryony makes it to the house, she discovers the sisters are still unconscious because they were knocked out while the gas stove had been on. Bryony manages to wake Jody up with no issues, but when she checks on Deborah it's too late, both mother and baby are dead. As families reunite all over town, lots of women begin feeling something in their bellies. 2 months after the incident, everyone in town is trying their best to live a normal life. Paul goes to see Jody and guesses she's pregnant, explaining they need to talk about it. Sam and Zoe are very happy because Zoe's pregnant too, but when they go to the hospital for the first checkup, they're shocked to be sent to a building in the back filled with many other women and their husbands. An agent from the government informs them that every woman of childbearing age that was in town during the incident got pregnant that day. Because the Midwich incident is considered a red-level threat, Paul wants everyone to sign the Official Secrets Act, but the order isn't well received, especially when they also notice there's a camera recording everything. Zoe tries to call her lawyer and finds signals aren't working here. There are also soldiers arriving to block the exit. Things are getting too tense, so Susanna cuts in to mediate the situation, pointing out that all these pregnancies can't be a coincidence. Zoe tries to explain she's the real deal, but the other women share their experiences, explaining some of them hadn't been with a man in a long time or don't like men at all. At that moment, all the town's teenage girls arrive and reveal they're also pregnant, finally convincing everyone to sign the papers so the government can investigate properly. Afterward, the pregnant women are put through some basic tests. While Susanna's waiting outside, she's called by Paul, who takes her to the office to introduce her to Bernard, a higher-up from Home Office. All the agents are impressed by Susanna's handling of the situation and ask her to be the counseling guide for the pregnant women. When the tests are done, Paul takes Jody to live in his house instead of letting her go back to the city. The next day Zoe gets a call from the hospital explaining that none of the fetuses have the father's DNA in them, only the mother's. She's starting to consider terminating the pregnancy, but Sam begs her not to, reminding her the doctors told them in the past they only have a 1% chance of having a baby. Stuart gets a text from Amrita saying she's pregnant too. Cassie decides to terminate her pregnancy. She goes to the hospital and meets Nora, who says a friend of hers tried to post about this on social media and the police took it down. The girls are joined by Rachel, and the three of them get ready to sign the termination forms. However, the lights begin flickering and the three women drop their pens to then walk out of the hospital as if in trance. Bryony is watching all this on the security cameras and informs Paul that the same thing happened with all the women that tried to terminate the pregnancy. 5 months later, the pregnant women continue to live as usual with the help of Susanna's counseling, although their bellies are bigger than they should be. Bryony receives a mysterious file from Bernard with confidential information about the town of Nordosk in Russia. Zoe tries to leave town on the train, but a mysterious force stops her from moving. She goes to see Susanna and confesses she felt like it was the baby who stopped her from leaving. Suddenly, lights begin flickering all over town, and every single pregnant woman discovers their waters have broken at the same time. Everyone is taken to the hospital, and after a few hours of arduous labor, the babies are born. They look perfectly normal, although Zoe still watches her child with suspicion. Later at night, the babies open their eyes and reveal them to be glowing. For the next 2 years, families are told to keep living normal lives, but the government forbids them from having contact with the outside world. Zoe's daughter Hannah and Rachel's son Joe look at each other through the window and establish a connection with Amrita's daughter Sunny, who has been living with her mother in the city with the money Stuart sent to them. A few hours later, Amrita and Sunny show up in town to see Stuart, and Amrita explains Sunny insisted on coming. Since the children are growing up very quickly, a special school is prepared for them, and Sam will be their teacher. During the school tour, the lights begin flickering and the children run to the window to see Charlotte is bringing Sunny. The kids immediately go to make a circle around Sunny and offer a school jacket to welcome her into the group. Suddenly Jane's dog begins barking at the kids and tries to go after them, but the kids turn around and stare creepily at the dog to make him stop. Zoe breaks the circle to take Hannah away, and she gets glared at too. At home, Zoe wonders how Hannah knew that girl, and Hannah says they've always known her. Susanna goes to see Amrita to confirm she got pregnant during the incident. Amrita explains to Susanna that she also tried to terminate the pregnancy, but in the end she walked away from the hospital. Paul arrives to tell Amrita she can't leave town, but Amrita refuses and tells Sunny they're leaving. Sunny doesn't want to leave though, she wants to stay with all the others, and she proceeds to name every single special kid by name. Moments later, they conduct an experiment where they use a series of images to confirm all the children share a hive mind, so what one of them sees is seen by the entire group. Zoe sneaks into the office to talk to Amrita and tell her about how the government pays them to keep the town in isolation. The women exchange numbers, and Zoe advises Amrita to leave while she can. Later, while Zoe is taking her daughter home, Hannah makes her mom stop so they can watch how Jane's dog is retrieved from the creek. Apparently the poor pet is dead, and Hannah smirks at the sight. When they arrive home, Zoe is very spooked, and Hannah tells Sam that he's the only one that loves her because Zoe hates her. Susanna shares the test results with Cassie, who later asks her daughter Evie about it. Evie confirms she can hear her friend's thoughts and that she didn't say anything because she didn't want to scare her mom, but Cassie assures her she'll always be loved. Then Evie finishes a drawing of the dead dog. Later, Sam goes out to get his car ready and chats with Rachel's husband Curtis, who complains about how the government has been handling things. He doesn't consider Joe his son and he only uses him for the money. The only boy Curtis cares about is David, the son they already had before the incident. Inside, Zoe looks for Hannah, who suddenly announces they didn't hurt the dog and forces her mother to move, causing her hand to get burned by the boiling water. Hannah releases her and repeats that the dog's death wasn't their fault. Amrita's still sure she wants to leave, but Susanna convinces her to give the project a chance. She takes Amrita to have a chat with Sarah while she looks over Sunny, who says she's always known the other kids. When Susanna looks away for a moment, Sunny disappears, and as soon as Amrita gets up to go looking for her, Sunny reappears next to Sarah. The kid asks Sarah for a hug, and as the lights begin flickering, Sunny calls Sarah Mummy. Hurt, Amrita takes Sunny away. After all the children are put to bed, Zoe goes to see Susanna to tell her what happened with her hand and how Sunny's arrival made everything worse, but Susanna is skeptical. In the meantime, Amrita tells Sunny it's time to leave, causing all the special kids to wake up. Amrita and Sunny make it to the parking lot, where Amrita leaves a message on Zoe's phone before trying to convince Sunny to get in the car. Sunny refuses and her eyes start glowing as the lights begin flickering and the special kids approach their windows to look in the distance. Moments later, Charlotte wakes up to find Sunny outside the house. Susanna is called to help and Sarah explains Sunny only said Amrita dropped her there and left. Nobody can contact Amrita on the phone and Susanna thinks of bringing Sunny with her, but Sunny wants to stay there, and Sarah accepts. At that moment, Susanna gets a call from Paul, who's found Amrita's car still in the parking lot. They go to investigate and find all the doors open with only one of Amrita's shoes inside. Meanwhile, Zoe listens to Amrita's voicemail and when she checks on Hannah, the kid makes a gesture as if asking her to keep the secret. A few days later, all the children begin attending the special school, showing great intelligence in every subject. Bryony and Paul continue to investigate Amrita's disappearance, but all the security cameras glitched while she was around. Susanna gathers the mothers to tell them about the hive mind, and Cassie thinks they should all accept it as the evolutionary step. Zoe doesn't attend this meeting and is starting to get tired of Hannah sneaking into her bed every night because she's been having nightmares since Sunny arrived. In the evening, Susanna notices Evie's having a nightmare and touches her forehead, which causes her to see a vision of a frozen landscape and a hand against a door. The next day, Paul compares the hotel footage from before and after the glitch, and notices the van next to Amrita's car is different. He finds the missing van in a warehouse that sells frozen products, and a worker tells him the vehicle is broken. Paul inspects it anyway, and when looks inside, he discovers Amrita's body. At the same time, Suzanne is checking Evie's drawings when she finds one of Amrita. Later Bryony and Paul report to Bernard, pointing out that the van shouldn't have stayed cold for so long if it was broken. Bernard asks them to make a cover-up to keep peace in town. Meanwhile, Paul's son Nathan and Joe play on the swings at school while waiting for their fathers. Curtis shows up with David, who wants to play on the swings too, so Curtis drags Joe off and gives David the spot. Joe and Nathan don't like this and begin glaring at David until the swing loses control, hitting Curtis with the seat and making David fall. Susanna goes to see Zoe, who doesn't want to talk because she hasn't been sleeping well because of Hannah. When Susanna sees the kid, she asks her if she's having nightmares too, but Hannah denies it. At that moment, Curtis arrives with a wounded David and blames Joe for everything even while Sam says it was an accident. When night falls,